news coming in. There has been a suspected blast on the metro in St Petersburg in Russia. Thick smoke has been seen emanating, and a train car has been damaged. Witnesses say that this looks like a blast. We are, in fact, waiting for more details. These are the pictures that we have for you coming out of St Petersburg in Russia, where it seems that there has been a blast. That's what some eyewitnesses seem to suggest. Those are the pictures that we have of this particular station where the blast seems to have occurred. What we know is that at least one train car has been damaged. Let's in fact now listen in to some details that we are getting at this point.
What we know has happened is that an explosion happened inside one of the train carriages at one of St. Petersburg's central metro station, the Senaya Square station. 2 metros have been closed down and they're being evacuated. And so far, we know there have been injuries and at least 10 people may have died from this explosion, but this cannot be independently verified nor confirmed. And of course, we'll be monitoring the situation there and bring you all the latest details as we get them, Marina.
Certainly, Emily. Well, while we were talking, we got some more information regarding what happened. We're hearing now that there are reportedly 5 people who are dead and 50 injured, and 7 metro stations are closed at the moment. Well, let's just look at some of the pictures that we got earlier from the scene in St. Petersburg in Russia. Well, you could see the smoke there rising in the metro station, and the Senaya Square is one of the central stations in the city where the blast reportedly took place. We're also hearing that there were 2 blasts, and people in the picture that you were looking at are covering their faces to protect themselves from the smoke. Witnesses say there are victims, and we are hearing that there are 5 people dead and 50 injured. And at the moment, 7 stations in St. Petersburg, in the St. Petersburg metro network, are closed. We'll bring you more information about what happened as we get it here on RT International, so do stay with us for that. Now, as the UK officially starts the process of leaving the European Union, there's yet another problem London faces.
So according to Russia TV, 5 people may have been killed and at least 10 others or 15 others injured in a suspected explosion that has rocked the metro, or the underground as it's called, in St. Petersburg in Russia. We are waiting for more details, but it is clear that there may in fact be several casualties. For more on that, let's now go across to my colleague Madhav Das Gopalakrishnan. Madhav, what details do we have at this stage? Of course, it looks very sketchy at the moment.
Yes, multiple casualties that have been reported. We understand that there are over 5 people who have lost their life. This is a blast that has taken place at the St. Petersburg metro station. As we understand, pictures that are coming in, at least 5 dead and 10 injured. Now, we don't know exactly which organization would be responsible for this kind of an explosion that has taken place, leaving so many dead and injured at St. Petersburg. But clearly, of course, at some level or the other, one would have to see whether this has anything to do with the Chechen rebels. Of course, witnesses have told various agencies that over 8 ambulances have been pressed into services over there at near St. Petersburg's Senaya Ploshad metro station, where in fact this incident has taken place. Local media have also reported that 3 metro stations have preventively been shut down as a result of this particular blast that has taken place. Now, also we understand that certain media over there have also brought out pictures of the train doors which have been completely blown out. Number of injured people, of course, that were there at the platform at the time that this incident took place. We do understand that it is morning hours in Russia, so clearly, of course, a huge amount of people who were there at the metro station at the time that this particular blast took place. One will, of course, have to get into the details of exactly who was behind this and exactly which organization was involved. But at this point of time, the primary focus as far as all agencies is concerned is to ensure that all the injured at that spot receive medical aid, first aid, and are rushed to the various hospitals in the nearby vicinity. We understand that large numbers of ambulances have been pressed into service at this point of time at the metro station.
All right, Madhav, thanks very much for those details. We'll come back to you for more in just a bit. Let me now go across to Geeta Mohan, who also joins us on the phone line. Geeta, it does look pretty worrying. Going by the preliminary reports, at least 5 people may have lost their lives and over 15 injured. As Madhav mentioned there, a busy time at the metro stations, one of which seems to have come under attack. What details can you share with us at this stage?
Well, right now, again, like Madhav was saying, very preliminary, but the blast occurred at the Sinaya Ploshkov metro station, and like you're reporting, yeah, several people have been injured. There are a lot of pictures and eyewitness accounts on social media, online, where people are putting out details of what is really happening. The cause of the explosion is not yet not known yet, and the authorities have already jumped into action and are trying to get details of what really happened and who could really be behind this entire attack. This, even as the emergency services have been pressed into action. Russia's emergencies ministry earlier, as soon as the blast occurred, had said that there are complaints about smoke coming out, and the staff members were going to the scene, but that was as early as when the blast had only occurred. Right now, the reports that we're getting is that it indeed is an explosion. There have been casualties, and many scores have been injured in this entire attack. And while details are only emerging, and some details are emerging right now, Neha, the fact is that there are problems that Russia has also faced in the past when it comes to emergencies, when it comes to extremism. We do not really know whether it's Chechen rebels, but they have in the past also attacked Russia in many parts and many cities of Russia in the past. But again, it would be too preliminary and too early for us to be naming any organization or any group belonging to a particular sect of people within Russia or a terror network from outside. But reports coming in from Russia, from various agencies in Russia, is that at least 10 casualties have already been reported so far after the blast on the subway. And this again was at a time when it was in the morning, so there were a lot of people, commuters, who were taking the subway to work, and 2 explosions on a train in a metro station is what we're being told were heard. One after the other, consecutive explosions that took place. So those are reports coming from the local media, Neha, and 10 people severely injured in the entire attack. Just even as emergency services are already in place, ambulances were rushed to the spot, and the injured have been rushed to the hospital. The president of Russia and the entire administration right now focusing on Kremlin, focusing on what has really been, what has really happened and how to tackle the situation.
We understand that the explosion happened inside the train, because one of the pictures we've come across, we see the door of one of the train carriages being blown off. And in the videos we've come across, we also see smoke filling up the platform where the explosion took place. We're also seeing pictures of people lying on the ground. So undoubtedly, many must have been injured in this incident. Now, there's no information yet indicating the cause of this incident, whether it's a technical fault or if it's something else. But we'll be monitoring that, and as soon as we get information about that, we'll be bringing them to you, Marina.
All right, Emily, thanks very much indeed for this update. Indeed, as you rightly put it, there's different information coming out to us, and we'll have to verify it and have it confirmed. We're now hearing that there are 10 people who were killed in this explosion in one of the stations in St. Petersburg. As we heard earlier from our correspondent, the central stations, around 7 of them, are closed at the moment, and we're also hearing that the prosecutor's office in St. Petersburg is launching an investigation. And here's more video that we have received from the scene. As you can see, there's a huge smoke in the underground station, and train services have been suspended. People apparently are trying to escape. However, we don't see much panic or chaos on the station, on the video, at least on this video. Well, let's see if Emily Sue has some updates for us as she's following the story. Emily, have you received any more information as to what happened? Because we were getting information as we talk, as the situation is developing very rapidly there. Have you got anything for us?
Well, Marina, I now understand that the incident happened at around 2:30 local time in St. Petersburg, and we now know that it happened at the Sinaya Square station, which is one of the most central stations in St. Petersburg. And the Sinaya Square station is located on the dark blue line of the metro, and the authorities have confirmed that 7 stations on this dark blue line have been closed down.
An explosion has occurred, a suspected blast at St. Petersburg metro station in Russia. You can see the visuals on your screen right now. A thick smoke ring has formed and a damaged train car in St. Petersburg metro. Witnesses are now saying that the blast has taken place inside one of the cars in that metro station. That's the geographical location we're showing you on your screens right now. This is near Sinaya Square. It's part of the metro network of the St. Petersburg city in northern Russia. We are getting some local media reports which suggest that eyewitnesses have recalled their encounter, as well as a blast inside a train car. Those are visuals coming to you straight from RT News, Russia Today News. And you can see a thick layer of smoke around where these passengers have gathered. We understand 5 people are already dead, and at least 10 have been injured. For the latest, we go across to Meghna Dekha, my colleague who joined us from the newsroom. Meghna, what do we have?
Well, in fact, even at the time when these disturbing visuals are coming in, Athar, we are trying to geographically explain where exactly these 2 blasts have happened. On your screens, you can see the Google map, and this is the area. This is part of their technology institute, which is there in St. Petersburg. The institute campus is around here, and this is where the blast has happened. Now, this is the metro station and roughly the area where the blast has happened. And this is on the blue line, and due to which the blue line, which extends all the way from here, and it takes a curve and it goes all the way around here. All the 7 metro stations near the one where this blast has happened. This is the Technology Institute metro station where the blast has happened. All these 7 other metro stations also nearby the college campus, which begins from here onwards, have all been closed down. Well, this is the initial reports which are coming in. Of course, back to you, Athar, because there are several very disturbing visuals also coming in.
We'll take a look at those and we'll also get in some international partners to come in with their coverage. Let's take a look, and let's cut live to RT News.
St. Petersburg confirmed they've already launched a probe into this explosion, but no information at hand indicating the cause of the incident. Judging on the pictures and the videos we've been seeing online, we know that the explosion most likely happened inside one of the train carriages, because in one of the photos we see the door of a train carriage being almost blown off. We also see smoke filling up the platform where the explosion took place. People running in panic, running away from where the explosion took place. But of course, this is a very, very fluid situation. So we'll be monitoring it and bringing all the latest. And I'll also be monitoring my social media feeds and bring all the details to you as soon as we get them, Marina.
Just a reminder to our viewers and some more information that Sinaya Square is one of the hubs, so to speak, where you can cross from one line to another line and connect to other lines in the city center. So normally there are a lot of people at this time of day, 2:30 p.m. as we hear the explosions happen there. Well, right now, as our correspondent who's following the story said, we are getting information, but some of this information still has to be confirmed. According to some unconfirmed reports, there are 10 people among the dead in the explosions, in the 2 explosions that happened on the St. Petersburg metro network. We're also hearing that there are 50 people who were injured, and there are children among those injured in the blast. Of course, some of this information has yet to be confirmed, but this is what we are getting through at the moment. Earlier, we saw some pictures of what's happening outside the metro stations. We saw some heavy police presence there and emergency services. And right now, let's take a look at what's happening outside. We see people outside of the metro stations. We see ambulances there, people trying to get out of the metro stations. At the moment, the metro stations in central St. Petersburg are closed, about 7 of them. So this is information that we have at this point. I'm hearing that we can talk to Afshin Ratansi from London. Afshin, are you with us on the line? Can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you fine.
Afshin, so what do you make of what happened? What thoughts do you have for us?
Of course, a lot of speculation at the moment in these early minutes since the explosions in St. Petersburg. But how it'll be viewed in London, hopefully, will be some kind of recognition as to why Moscow and Beijing, for that matter, have been so concerned about US-UK-backed militancy for Islamic militancy across the Middle East. If any politicians from the old Obama administration are still skulking around the corridors of Washington in the Trump administration, they'll be looking at this, as will the current Theresa May government here, and be thinking, did we have anything to do? Did our policies help to foster Islamism and resurgent Islamism that is affecting countries such as Russia and China? Irony of ironies, within the next 24 to 48 hours, Theresa May will be in Saudi Arabia, the country long linked, at least in the United States by intelligence reports, to Islamist terrorism. Certainly,
is being felt in two different states, or being reported to do two different stations. St. Petersburg is currently where Vladimir Putin, the Russian president, is. He is there for an economic forum at the moment. And we understand from the Russian news wires that he's been informed about what's going on. The investigations have started already into what might have caused these explosions. The latest that we have heard from Russian news wires is that there are at least 10 fatalities so far, 50 injured. From the pictures that we can see coming out of St. Petersburg at the moment, Russia's second city, of course, it looks as if that death toll could climb higher. This looks like a significant incident, I think, on the St. Petersburg metro system.
Rory, how popular is the metro system? We first heard about these blasts only some 30 minutes ago. That's 3 o'clock, I think, in the afternoon in St. Petersburg. How many people, is it a busy time
We've been
on the
told
subway?
also that 8 metro stations are being closed to passengers. Well, we're talking about 3 o'clock in the afternoon. We know that Technologicheski Institute is next to a big academic institution, so it's I think a station that's going to be used frequently by students and academic staff. The St. Petersburg metro system, as the Moscow metro system, is the main system of transportation, commuting for people in the city, and it's used by millions of people every day. So this is a very highly used metro system, and there will have been I think crowded trains at the time, crowded stations, and that's probably going to be reflected in the injury toll, the death toll, as the information comes in. Of course, I think this is going to be climbing. What we're hearing at the moment, coming out on Russian news wires, is that this is probably, well, they're looking into this being a terrorist attack, and the investigation is certainly going to be heading that way in the early stages until any other information comes out. So yeah, I think we're going to have to wait for more information to come in on what might have caused this, but at the moment the Russians are treating it as if it's a terrorist attack.
All right, Rory, just stay with us while we bring our viewers up to speed with the information that we have so far. So just in the last 30 minutes or so, we started getting reports of a blast, possibly 2 blasts on the St. Petersburg subway station. An explosion, we're hearing, hit an underground station in St. Petersburg. The TASS and Interfax agencies reported a blast at the Sinaya Ploshad metro station, which left a number of victims. So far, we're hearing that 10 people have died in the blast. We're seeing images on social media. We're seeing a video showing a train carriage with its doors blown open, damage inside, people milling around the subway station, and we could even see some smoke in pictures earlier. Russian President Vladimir Putin is in St. Petersburg, and Russian media are saying that he has been informed, and we're just hearing from our Russia correspondent Rory Challens earlier that this could be looked into, investigated as a possible terrorist incident. So again, there has been a blast in the St. Petersburg metro, in the St. Petersburg metro at the Sanaya Ploshchad metro station. 10 people dead and possibly up to 50 people injured. Rory, are you still with us? Let's try to speak to our Russia correspondent Rory Challens again. Rory, can you hear me?
Yes, I'm here.
So, Rory, is it one blast? Do we know yet how many blasts there have been? Is it one blast? Is it two blasts?
We've had confirmation now from the emergency ministry that there were indeed two blasts on the St. Petersburg metro system. The metro system is being evacuated. 7 of the stations in the St. Petersburg metro system have been closed. That includes many of the central ones, because the 2 stations where it's believed these blasts went off are both centrally located. Putin, the Russian president, is being told about this. That's come from Dmitry Peskov, who's the spokesman for the Kremlin. And as you say, Elizabeth, Vladimir Putin is in St. Petersburg at the moment. He's there for an economic forum. So we can draw, I don't know, maybe draw conclusions from that. Of course, it's some people will be. It's if this does turn out to be a terror attack, and it looks as if that is probably the line of investigation that the Russians are going to be going down initially, is Putin's location today going to be in any way connected with this? Well, we'll have to see what the information produces when it comes out later. But yeah, I'll go over what we know so far. That information is coming out piecemeal, but 7 metro stations closed in central St. Petersburg. The emergency ministry has confirmed 2 explosions. We understand that the
Vladimir Putin said that all possible causes are being considered at the moment, including terrorism. Well, of course, living in big cities means living on high alert, as you mentioned earlier. Right now, I'd like to thank you for talking to us here on RT International, sharing your thoughts with us. And let's now cross to Emily Sue, our correspondent who is following this story. Well, Emily, tell us some more details that you're probably getting at the moment as we receive information from different sources. What have you got for us? What updates do you have at this point?
Well, Marina, the Russian President Vladimir Putin, he just made a statement regarding this explosion in St. Petersburg. He expressed his condolences to all those affected and all those injured and other victims of this explosion. And he also said that it's too early to talk about the motive of this attack, and that we should let the investigators to find out the exactly the cause of this incident. But he did stress that all possible motives will be investigated, and that includes terrorism. And as for the details of this incident, as I've said, this just happened. All the details are just still coming in. Information is very sketchy at this point. But from the reports we've come across, we know that at least 20 people have died, and in this explosion, children included. But this figure cannot be independently verified. It cannot be confirmed. And based on the videos and the photos we've been seeing on social media feeds, we see people running in panic away from the explosion, covering their mouths. We see people lying on the ground at the metro stop. And not to mention, the metro stop is one of the most central metro stations in St. Petersburg, the Senaya Square station. Last I checked, the authorities confirmed 8 stations on the dark blue line of the Senaya Square station have been closed down, and they are being evacuated as we speak. As for the explosion itself, judging on the information we have and the pictures we're seeing, we know the explosion took place inside one of the train carriages, because in one of the photos we see the door of one of the train carriage being completely blown off because of the explosion. I've also read reports that this bomb was reportedly being rigged by shrapnel, but that's not confirmed, but that might perhaps explain the vast amount of casualties and also people injured because of this explosion. But Marina, let me just recap. The Russian president, he has expressed his condolences of the victims of this incident, and he did say that all possible motives will be investigated, including terrorism. Marina.
And we're also hearing that President Putin has discussed the situation with the FSB director, and we'll be probably hearing more on this. Emily, right now, thanks so much for talking to us and bringing us this update. Well, we are showing you the first pictures of what happened in St. Petersburg today. You could see smoke rising there on the Senaya Square metro station, and people are covering their faces to protect themselves from the smoke, also trying to get into the carriages to see if there are any people there left, if somebody needs help, and to get out of the train. We're hearing that 30 people are injured at the moment, and unconfirmed reports say that up to 10 people have been killed. 8 metro stations in the center of the city were closed. There are also unconfirmed reports that an explosive device was rigged with shrapnel, and according to some preliminary information, we're hearing that those were homemade explosive devices with low capacity. Well, the St. Petersburg prosecutor's office has launched an investigation into the blast. Just some of the pictures that you're looking at that show what's happened on the metro station. Well, people seem to be confused there, as the station where the blast happened is one of the hubs in the subway network, the station where you could cross to different lines and move to different areas of the city. We're hearing that the central stations right now are closed in St. Petersburg. I believe we can now talk to Doug Weeks, who's a terrorism expert and who's on the line with us. Doug, are you with us? Can you hear us? Hello, Doug?
Станцию эвакуировать, в общем.
And we can now talk to an expert who's joining us to discuss what happened. Hello?
Well, let's get some inputs of our own. Now, Tatiana Shaumian, she's a Moscow resident, joins us on the phone line right now. Tatiana, at this point, what can you tell us what the public knows in St. Petersburg about the blast that took place in the train? We understand local media is reporting about 10 people dead.
You know, we just now we got this information, but this is terrible. This is big tragedy. And this is again and again the terrorism is their job, you know. And this is 10 people have been killed, and 10 people, and 7 metro stations in St. Petersburg are closed now.
What are the authorities looking at, Tatiana? Our information suggests that all possible angles are open right now, and Russian authorities are looking at this being a terror attack. That's all we know.
No, but that is a terrorism attack. That is not the accident without special preparations for that. And this had been organized by the organizations of terrorist people. And I don't think that this is some private people have done that. I am afraid that this is really because this is simultaneous explosions.
All right, Tatiana, thank you for speaking to us right now. This is a terrible time and a difficult time for those involved, really, and their families as well. Tatiana Shomyan from Moscow, thank you for joining us. Let's tip in once again to Russia today for the latest.
Or to determine the motive of this attack, but he says all possible motives will be investigated, and that includes terrorism. And as for the reports of casualty, last I checked, reports are indicating that 10 people have been killed in this incident, about 20 of them injured, but this figure cannot be confirmed. It's information coming from all different sources, and I'm sure you understand the situation is quite fluid right now, and I'll bring you all the latest as I get them, but the latest development is that all metro stations in St. Petersburg have been closed.
All right, Emily, thanks so much for this update. And right now, let's take a look at some of the pictures of what's happening outside of the metro stations there. Take a look where we see some people there, and there are emergency services. There are ambulances there trying to help people get out of the metro stations. At the moment, we're hearing that all metro stations in St. Petersburg are closed. Around 80 rescue workers are at the scene at the moment. There are people obviously working inside and outside. There's heavy police presence outside of the city metro.
To our man in Russia, Darian joins us. He's a NewsX correspondent. Darian, what is the latest we're hearing right now? We understand Vladimir Putin, who's in St. Petersburg, has already met and briefed the FSB officials, and they're looking at a terror attack right now. Do we have any more details?
Well, yes, Vladimir Putin is in St. Petersburg today. He's been meeting with the Belarusian counterpart, Alexander Lukashenko, and also taking part in a media forum held there in St. Petersburg. We know that the Kremlin press service said that he's been informed by the intelligence services about these blasts, and that he promised that there will be support for the families of the injured and possible victims. We do not know at this point. There have been no confirmed official reports of how many people have suffered as a result of these reported blasts. There were reportedly 2 blasts at 2 different stations at Senaya Ploshchad and Technologicheский Institute, but at this point there's been no confirmed reports about the second one at Technologicheский Institute. So we know that Senaya Ploshchad is a metro station, a very busy one, as it is an intersection of 3 metro lines where people make changes to different lines. So quite a crowded place. Also some video that surfaced on the internet and photos show a metro car that appears to be damaged with, as media reported, been some drops of spills of blood on the floor. We've seen people lying on the floor in the metro station, the platform there, but these are unverified video and unconfirmed witness reports. The authorities have said that responding teams are working on the site of these reported blasts, and investigators, of course, are also working to find out what happened, what could have triggered those blasts. But at this point, there's been no official statement from the authorities on what could have caused these blasts and
Daria, indications from the reports we are getting, of course, also would point to the fact these are low-intensity bombs that were placed, if there were bombs at all, and also there was some shrapnel involved. I believe the information is still hazy on what kind of explosions they were, but I also believe Russian prosecutors, St. Petersburg prosecutor's office has already launched an investigation into this.
Yes, they have launched investigation into this, and investigators are working on the ground there. We know that 7 metro stations have been closed for public access at this point, and people have been evacuated from those train stations where these reported blasts have happened. We do not know at this point about the reasons of what have caused these blasts. And the authorities and Vladimir Putin just recently stated that all scenarios are being considered by investigators, from sort of a technical problems with the blast or impossible terror act. Nothing is ruled out. But we do know that investigation is underway, and until it is over, we are not likely to hear the causes of the blast. We need to find out that from the authorities when they're ready. An investigation is being completed, or at least some preliminary results from them. But at this point, media here in Russian TV, state-run TV, and online media just carry on with reports from witnesses saying that they've heard loud blasts, and one of them reported it happened between the train stations as the train was on its way from one point to another. We do know, again, from these witness reports unconfirmed by the authorities, that the train stations were filled with smoke and that people were trying to get out. The authorities say that responders are on the ground working to help to investigate what happened, and but first and foremost, of course, help the people the possible victims, and those who have been injured in these blasts. According to unconfirmed reports, 20 people have been injured and some 10 died as a result of these blasts.
Daria, given the fact that the President Vladimir Putin was in the same city where this happened, and of course, given the fact the kind of exposure, I would say, that Russian forces have to the war in the Middle East as well, and the fact that this will be treated really, if it is a terror attack, we can of course expect some sort of reaction from the government sources, perhaps even Mr. Putin himself, who will of course send out a message after finding out who it was that attacked Russia.
Well, at this point, again, it is too early to suppose if there could have been a terror act, or
You're waiting for that
speculation of what could have been. Yeah, well, we're still waiting for confirmation for authorities to tell us. But certainly, if these are in fact bombs that have caused these explosions, and if this happened on the same very day that Vladimir Putin's been attending St. Petersburg, is in St. Petersburg, so of course this may sort of cause a lot of questions as to the timing of these explosions. But again, until the authorities confirm this, it is difficult to sort of speculate on what could be the links and whether this could be in any extent linked to Russia's activities in Syria and Russia's fight against terror. At this point, we have not heard of any terrorist groups claiming responsibility for this. So at this point of time, until the investigation or the authorities at least tell the public what had happened, it is too early but premature to speculate on what could have been the cause and whether it could have been a terror attack.
Since there is an investigation on the ground right now, we'll of course stick to what the Russian investigators are telling us and telling the media, local Russian media included. Daria Bondanchuk, also the fact that the body count really is high. We're being told 10 people already perhaps are dead, and more than 15 to 25 people are injured, some of them severely. What is the kind of conditions that they're undergoing? Have they been shifted to hospitals? Is the rescue and relief already on the ground visible?
Well, as this is an unfolding situation and the events happened just over an hour ago, there's very little information that we're getting from the authorities. There's been no official confirmation of the number of injured or possible victims of this blast. I see Russian media TV broadcasting photos taken by passengers of the St. Petersburg metro system, some taken near this metro car that appears to be damaged by a possible explosion, and also people on the ground, and of course numerous ambulances outside the exit from the metro. And at this point, it is difficult to say what. Of course, there's little information about what could cause
We
the
completely
blast
understand
and
that, Daria. We do thank you for your time and the details and the inputs you could give us. Petersburg blast that has happened. 2 explosions have been reported. Russian agencies and authorities, of course, are holding back information, saying that they're investigating all possible angles, including a terror attack. Let's go live yet again to Russia today to find out the latest.
Push security bounds outward so that the attacks will not take place in these facilities. However, it's at least my opinion that doing so really doesn't solve a whole lot of actual purpose other than potentially protecting the facility itself. Because any time that you have a security corridor, if you will, where people have to pass through, going from, say, an unsecured area to one that is more secured, then there is a bottleneck there. And it doesn't really matter where that bottleneck occurs. It becomes a choke point where there is opportunity. So no doubt this will result in the same types of discussions that we've seen in the past, but I'm not sure that it is necessarily one that is going to provide a great more deal of security to what is already in place, other than, as I said, protecting the facility itself, and that's generally not the biggest concern.
Well, Doug, any idea why St. Petersburg was attacked?
I would not want to speculate. In this day and age, with the number of individuals that are out there, the number of conflicts that are taking place around the globe, the opposition groups to the various government parties, I mean, it is really anybody's guess at this particular point in time. The one thing that I think is notable in this particular case is the desire to once again hit another public transportation system. And so far reports are there has been one, possibly two blasts with up to 10 people killed and an estimated 30 that are injured. I would also speculate that given the fact that this blast occurred inside a compartmentalized environment, being the actual train car, that the number of casualties is likely going to rise.
All right, Doug, well, thanks so much for talking to us and giving us your thoughts. As a terrorism expert, you have a lot of expertise. Of course, what happened today, and in fact, any incident like this does shatter all of us, and it's hard to come to terms with what happened right now. All possible causes are being looked at, including terrorism. That's what Vladimir Putin said. We're showing some of the latest pictures from St. Petersburg, and in fact these are live pictures, so we can see now what's happening, what's going on there outside of the Sinaya Square metro station in St. Petersburg. That's where the blast happened earlier today, around 2:30 p.m. local time. A very busy time in a big city, and Sinaya Square station is one of the major hubs in the city, connecting the center with other parts of town. Well, at the moment, unconfirmed reports say that there are 10 people that are dead and 30 people that are injured, and the prosecutor's office in St. Petersburg is launching an investigation into what happened. About 80 rescue workers are on the scene. There are people inside the metro network and outside helping people who need some assistance there. We know at the moment that all of the metro stations in St. Petersburg are closed. So this is information that we have for you at the moment. Right now, you're still looking at the live picture. And let us show you some of the earlier pictures. In fact, the first pictures that we received from the scene. As you can see, smoke could be seen rising on Sinai Square metro station where the blast reportedly took place. People are covering their faces there to protect themselves from the smoke, and there are reports that all metro stations have been closed at the moment. They're also unconfirmed.
Several times. In more recent years, going back, say, 2 or 3 years, the attacks have basically been happening outside of the big cities, outside of Moscow and St. Petersburg. So in the run-up to the Sochi Olympics, there was an attack in the city of Volgograd. I think that was in the winter, just going into the Sochi Winter Olympics. An attack on a bus station, I think, and of course there was the bomb attack on a Russian plane, bringing it down over the Egyptian Sinai Peninsula, full of Russian tourists. That was just a year or so ago. That was attributed to ISIL. ISIL said they were responsible for it. it's that is I think the first attack that you could argue is blowback for Russia's involvement in Syria. That was what the ISIL magazine was saying at the time when it was claiming that it was responsible for bringing down that plane. We have not yet had any claim of responsibility for these explosions. We don't know whether this was ISIL, whether it was a different kind of group, or whether it was terrorism at all. But it will be interesting to see if and when we do get some kind of claim of responsibility, what the justification is for hitting targets such as planes, such as metro stations and metro trains.
All right, Roy, thank you very much for that. Stay with us. Well, earlier I spoke to Pavel Felgenhauer, a military analyst, and he gave us his analysis based on what's currently known.
Right now, the main fear and the main anxiety would be, is this a one-time event, or this is going to be or may be a series of attacks? If it was really organized through some kind of ISIS-Daesh affiliates, they tend to have multiple attacks. So most likely the Russian authorities will be bracing for a possible series of attacks right now and trying desperately to beef up security measures in soft targets like the metro lines in St. Petersburg and in Moscow too, and in other public places. There's going to be a drastic increase in security measures. They should have been prepared, and there was a lot of reports and coming from the Russian counterintelligence SSB agency that they have thwarted many previous attacks. They didn't thwart this one, obviously. And well, if you don't have from confidential informers free intelligence information, it's very hard to stop technically an attack, say, in the metro line. You can't actually screen all the passengers. You can screen some of the passengers, but in a rush hour, there are millions and millions moving in the metro lines of St. Petersburg and even more in Moscow. You can't screen them all. And so you can't actually be sure that someone won't get through with a bomb.
Let's go back to our correspondent, Rory Challens, now. He's monitoring all the information as it comes in. And, Rory, we're hearing the St. Petersburg subway has shut down all stations following the explosion.
Yeah, that's right. The latest information is that it's pretty much a total shutdown on St. Petersburg's metro system. That's unsurprising, I think, and supporting what Pavel Felgenhauer was saying there about security being beefed up elsewhere in Russia. We do understand also that security is being tightened on the Moscow metro system. If there are further devices, if there are further attacks, of course, the Russian security apparatus will want to prevent those. We understand via a news organization called Fontanka.ru based in St. Petersburg that one other device was found on the St. Petersburg metro system. It's being talked about that these explosions were caused by unidentified explosive devices, possibly talks of them being filled with shrapnel. The investigative committee here in Russia has already opened a criminal investigation into these incidents. So, of course, they are pursuing an avenue of investigation that this was intentional and was, I think, they're going to be looking at whether this was some sort of terrorist attack. All the information that is coming out so far is leading in that direction. Vladimir Putin, the Russian president, is saying that it's too early to speak about the causes. He's saying the investigation will show what was really going on here, but all theories are under consideration, including criminal, including terrorism. Russia, as I've been saying, is no stranger to attacks such as this. The Moscow metro system has been hit numerous times in the past, not recently, but it has been hit before. The most recent attacks that have taken place significant attacks have been taking place on Russian targets were the attacks in Volgograd heading into the Sochi Winter Olympics, and of course the bomb that blew a Russian commercial jet out of the sky over the Sinai Peninsula in Egypt.
Rory, thank you very much for that. That's Rory Challens, who's going to stay with us in Moscow. And Rory, again, just to recap, the latest we're hearing is that the St. Petersburg subway has shut down all stations following the explosion. What kind of reaction are you hearing to these explosions where you are in Moscow?
Well, of course, this is now wall-to-wall coverage on Russian TV channels and across social media. The pictures that I think we're seeing on the screen right now are being disseminated and spread around. Whenever anything like this happens, wherever it is, whether it be in Russia, whether it be in the United States, whether it be in Pakistan, India, any other country, of course people stop what they're doing and they turn towards sources of information. They turn towards the internet, they turn towards TV channels, and they try and find out as much as they can. And of course, in the early stages of an event like this,
well, let's connect with Nidhi Balachandran. She's a columnist out of Moscow. Thank you, Nidhi, for speaking to us. We are also getting to know what the authorities are putting out there right now, that they're looking at all aspects, including terrorism and criminal. For now, we know that there are at least 10 people that have been killed, according to local media reports. And I believe now the FSB has taken over the investigation. What else can you tell us at this point?
Hello?
Yes, Nidhi, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Yes, I can. Hi.
What can you tell us in terms of latest inputs that the Russian authorities are putting out? We believe everything is under investigation, including criminal and terror angles in this investigation. And we do understand there have been a large amount of casualties, 10 people dead, more than 25 injured. Can you confirm those numbers for us?
Yes. There is no confirmation really, but yes, everyone's talking about the main government channel, the Russian channel is running the news of the 10 people have died. They're showing pictures of the metro, which is filled with smoke. And of course, people are not really panicking, but they are more sad and angry. And they're thinking that it's probably a terror act. And earlier, there was news of 6 stations being shut down.
Yes.
But now, apparently, the entire metro has been shut down, and there is a state of emergency, and they're showing helicopters which are being used to evacuate people.
All right, so you're saying there's no panic as of now, and that's a good thing that can be counted as a victory here?
There is no panic. In fact, very quickly, they were interviewing people on Russian local television, and everyone, each and every person said that Russians are a tough lot, and if you try to scare us, there is nothing that will come out of it. It will only unite us further. And there is no panic, but yes, of course, we were planning to go out today, but my friends are calling me and warning me to not take the metro, even in Moscow.
Right,
and
we understand
take the
that
taxi instead.
the metro services in Moscow have also upped their security there as well. As far as the Russian authorities are concerned, Nidhi, and this is a response really by a population that is used to being at least attacked or at least not loved too much. But Vladimir Putin is also in St. Petersburg today, and I believe he's already been briefed by his intelligence services chiefs here on the cause of this attack. They're still withholding that information, whether or not the authorities, Nidhi, are treating this as a terror attack, and I believe we should wait for that confirmation.
You know, we should, but my guess is, I mean, that's my personal opinion, that it is probably a terror attack because in Moscow there are no checks in the metro, security checks. But today I took a short ride in the center, and there was a man with a rucksack, and very quickly some military men ran and asked him to put the rucksack through a scanner.
All right.
Now that's a little strange because I'm brown too, and I was carrying a rucksack too, but I was not asked, I was not checked.
All right,
So
fair enough. Nidhi, thank you for joining us. We understand that Vladimir Putin has made a statement. He's not ruling out terror at this point. Every angle will be investigated. Let's listen in to Russia today right now.
was criticizing Russia. It was talking about war crimes. And so this has got to stop. I think it's up for people in the West now to say to their governments, enough's enough. We're all being threatened by this terrorism. In London or Moscow, Paris, all over the world, we should come together now and work together. It's the only way it's going to be defeated, Dan, is international cooperation at the highest level. But it's not going to be defeated if the Americans are still putting Russia at #1 threat, which is ludicrous. The threat to the citizens of the world is from this extremist terrorism threat. That's what's killing people in London and in St Petersburg. It's not Russians. It's not that. So I think the West has got to change its policies.
Well, Neil, as you said, we should all come together now. A week ago, there was a terror attack in London. France and Germany have also recently seen a series of atrocities. So the question, I think it's the obvious question, is why don't we see more cooperation to fight terrorism? Do you think there will be perhaps more cooperation after what happened today? Could this incident lead to the creation of a broader coalition, perhaps?
I would like to see that happen, but I think you've got to be very pessimistic, bearing in mind what's been happening in America. Don't forget, Donald Trump got elected. He said he was going to work with Russia against groups like ISIS. That hasn't happened yet because, of course, he's been under enormous pressure due to this McCarthyite witch hunt going on in America to try to smear anybody who wants better relations with Russia. The American deep state military-industrial complex wants to keep this enmity with Russia going. The arms manufacturers want to keep it going. There's money in this. We see this massive NATO military build-up in Russia, and this is the problem, because the West is focusing on Russia and not focusing on defeating the terrorist scourge, which is killing civilians around the world. And so until there's a shift in the Western policy towards Russia, and the West does cooperate with Russia and work together, then I'm afraid that this danger of terrorism is only going to carry on and possibly increase. Because, as I said, in Syria, the West could have been working with Russia to defeat terrorism. No, it's been undermining it. It's been backing sometimes very radical jihadist groups in Syria and been undermining the Syrian government and the Russians in Syria for fighting. So this has got to stop. And I think it will only stop, Marina, if the public in the Western countries say enough's enough. We should be working with Russia and not against Russia.
All right, Neil, thanks so much for talking to us here on RT International and giving us your thoughts. Neil Clark, World Affairs journalist and broadcaster, talking to us here.
Thanks, Marina.
Now, President Putin has expressed condolences.
Governor spokesman says at least 10 people have been killed, 50 injured in 2 bomb blasts. That's the updated information there. Investigators are looking into the possibility of a terror attack. Russia's state news agency says an explosive device was set off in a subway car. All underground stations have been shut after the blast. Russian President Vladimir Putin has offered condolences to the families of those killed. Well, let's speak to Olivier Guita now, who's a security and political risk analyst at the consultancy firm Global Strat. Mr. Guita, very good to have you with us on Al Jazeera. So firstly, your reaction to these explosions in St. Petersburg?
Very unsurprising in terms of possible ramifications with terrorism, indeed with Islamic State having threatened time and again, and even more in the past few weeks, Russia. And after Islamic State about 10 days ago claimed its first attack in Chechnya against a Russian military base, I think it's fair to say that one of the lead could be Islamic State and the other lead could be Chechen nationalists, but in a way that could end up being the same, because Chechens represent one of the largest contingent of foreign fighters in Syria and Iraq.
Mr. Guita, given these threats that Russia has been facing, how prepared would you say they were?
Look, compared to other nations around the world, I mean, Russia has suffered also from Chechen terrorism for a long while. In terms of what can be done through the transport system, very difficult to monitor the transport system as we've seen in Brussels and in other areas, and it's difficult to be prepared. The only thing that we can see is after the fact how they could have reacted in another way. If it's part of a campaign, which I think it's going to be the case, that this is possibly the beginning of other attacks in the next few months, then they will have to get a whole slew of security measures in public transportation, but also in public spaces, which I suspect they will do.
What would those security measures look like?
But the metro will be difficult in terms of getting as much as possible security in, but down the road, in terms of numbers of people going through the metro, they will have to get much more human intelligence rather than physical security, because it's impossible in a town like St. Petersburg or Moscow to get everybody through a metal detector before they jump on the metro. So it's going to be difficult, and that's the conundrum that the West and now Russia is in terms of security. Is how can you secure a place that is so frequented for people and going through the security? I mean, we all know that for the airports it's already a lot, but the number of people that are traveling on the metro each day is much more than through an airport. So I suspect they will have to get much more work in terms of human intelligence, and as we've seen with, if it were to be claimed by Islamic State, we would know within 12 to 24 hours if they're behind it. And if that's the case, then it's a change of the equation, because as of now, Russia's military presence in Syria and airstrikes were carefully avoiding hitting at Islamic State. So I would suspect that what we would see is possibly an escalation of military intervention in Syria against Islamic State, something that Russia has not really done.
All right, Mr. Gita, thank you very much for joining us there from London. Do stay with us while we go over what we know so far. So the governor's spokesman says at least 10 people have been killed and 50 injured in 2 bomb blasts on a train in St. Petersburg. Investigators are looking into a possible terror.
Right now is Pankaj Saran, Indian ambassador to Russia. Mr. Saran, thank you for joining us right now. Are all Indians, we are being told, in Russia are safe? What can you tell us apart from that about the circumstances of this blast, this explosion? The Russian authorities are investigating all angles right now.
Well, it is still very early to provide all the details, but our Consul General in St. Petersburg, Mr. Sharma, he is in contact with the local authorities, and we are monitoring the situation very closely. So far, we do not have any reports of any Indian casualties or any other Indians affected, but nevertheless, we are in contact with the authorities, and we await further details from the Russian authorities. I think the emergency services are already on the spot, and the relevant Russian authorities are working to ascertain the full extent of the damage, and we will have to wait and see what are the other details that they will be able to convey to us.
Still early to call anything. Ambassador Saran, we're also being told that the St. Petersburg metro, at least 8 to 10 stations have been shut down for further investigation, and also security has been increased in Moscow and the metro system there as well. So is this part of a precautionary sort of blanket of security that Russia wants to throw over in case there are more attacks, or it's not just a lone wolf attack, if at all it's a terror attack? I'm just preempting that.
No, I think, as I mentioned to you, it's very early to characterize the attack in any manner at all. Yes, they have put out reports and they have shut down a few metro stations. I think we just need to wait to see what the investigations bring up. We have to wait to see what is the full extent of the damage. And we are therefore following events very closely. The Russian government and the local authorities have a very robust system of emergency response. And I'm quite confident that they would be attending to this emergency in the best possible manner.
All right, Ambassador Pankaj Saran, thank you for speaking to NewsX.